With all that said, let me close this. Let's get it started. So where's my VS Code? And start from terminal. I'm gonna open two tabs. One would be for dealing with the operation Spring Boot, the other one navigating through the folders. So this one would be cd, let's say, or let's name the folder Spring Tutorial, cd document Spring Tutorial, and then do Visual Studio Code. And before I start doing anything on a Spring Boot, I'm going to create my database. So my SQL workbench is open. The font is a little bit smaller, so we don't care. So we want to name our company Worldwide Logistics. So the first thing I'm going to drop, if I have it, okay, create the database, use it, and show me if there are any tables. All three commands, one after another. So there are no tables. Now time for a Spring Boot. Command Shift. So as I have mentioned in other videos, I have installed all the extensions for Visual Studio Code, and you can add the plugins and extensions from here. So I'm not worried about that. I hope that you guys already know it. So this is going to be a Java project. What do you want to name it? Let's name it Worldwide Logistics, and it will be invitation for showcase. So if you use 2.3, there are some minor changes and breaks your application, and it's good to read the documentation, because validation took me a while to figure out why it was causing problem. I had to read the documents because it used to be part of the package and my application was no longer working. So the three commands I'm going to use is definitely Spring Web, and that's with the REST application using MVC. Yes. And then div tool, I can see it here, we can type it, and then JPA, because we're using Hibernate, and the last one, MySQL as a database. So when you use JPA, the good thing is you don't care about the database type. MySQL, Postgres, whatever it is, it's gonna translate your code into that SQL, standard SQL. So you're not worried about that one. So the last thing I want to do is validation IO, and you can either download it, get the extension from their website, or you can just do it here. And that's the 5 extensions we need for this one. So I said I want to save it in a Spring Tutorial. That would be a Spring Tutorial here. I want to open it in a new workspace. And yes, you always, for the auto configuration, I always say yes, because you don't have to add stuff. Whenever you make a change, it will automatically import it. So the settings are ready. So let's build a skeleton. The trial for a skeleton is simple. Well, let me get to my terminal. So a couple things we will do. We have to configure our database. We have to add the database configuration so it can start and run, and then add since we are rendering a JSP page in the server, we have to tell the Spring Boot what is the view part of this server with the Tomcat. So I'm gonna come to this part, which is POM XML, the main core of the engine. So, and I need 2 more dependencies. I can add it all the way to the end. And I already have opened a side project here. So I'm gonna copy that because I don't want to keep googling. It takes time, which I want to just do it in a shorter time, and that would be copy from the other page, paste it here. So this one will render your JSP page side, and this one will render your JSTL tag, so it's the servlet side. So these two will take care of your JSP rendering view page, and you need that. Save. Whenever you do this in a Spring 2 suite or some of the applications, sometimes when you change it, it pops up like, do you want to auto configure it? You would say yes. So the only thing we added the extra compared to last version is this validation code. So if you don't have it in a Spring 2.2 and you upgrade, it gives you a problem in model validation, you would just add that one. So those are the two things we added here, and let's go configure our database, and that would take us to main resources and the application the same easy way, copy paste. The good thing about copy paste, it's fast. The bad thing, when there's a problem, it takes a while to solve it. You can change the server port, and I'll leave it the 33308 or 8080 for the Spring Boot. So that's the server when it runs, what port you want. You can change that, but I'm just running this tutorial, so it's fine. And the first, let's create the database. I think we created. Let's double check. Copy the name, yes, and bring that here. So that's my user, that's my password, and this thing, the prefix, we will explain it in JSP page, and because it makes the code line shorter. So saved. And one of the good thing about the new version is it renders JSP index page automatically, like pages. Okay, so we did that. Now we need to build a web application structure. So in folder where you can see under main, you can see resources, Java, we need one more folder, and that would be to handling the web INF. So to make sure that I don't make any mistakes, I'm going to copy this address, easy, paste it in the new one. So there you go, source. So main. There are two ways to make sure you don't create it in the wrong place. One, as always, you would just right click here and it would say open it in terminal, and that's where you would handle it if you want to do it here. But if you do one outside, you want to make sure you're inside main folder, and here you will create a new folder called web app, or make dir web app. There we go, cd web app. We see that it is created now. Sometimes you have to refresh to see it. We will call this one make dir web all caps inf. You see, directory inf. And the last one, we will say touch, or if you're using, what is it, PowerShell in Windows, you will say, I think new item. Yeah, new item, something like that. Yeah, new item. You will, but in here we will say touch index.jsp. There we go. And we want to build this one. And let's drop the code for that. And I need to read this page and tell Tomcat and Spring Boot, I need to tell that this is the code. This is the JSP, so Java understands it. And we need an HTML page. So we can either get it from W3 HTML School, or I can easily get a simple template, very basic. HTML, so that comes with the border. If we add a table, we will add a table, so it doesn't matter. It's not gonna look nice. It won't be a nice web page, but all we care is it needs to do the job, and that's your job to make changes. Welcome to what? And there we go. So the good thing about the Spring Boot 3 is once you run it, if nothing wrong, it will render this page automatically. Come to the old folder where we can see POM.xml. Where is it? There we go. And you would say Maven Spring Boot run. It's not dash. So the reason you would want to do each step testing is because once you build the application and you have a problem, then you don't know how far your application was working. So then the troubleshooting will make you go all the way back to the beginning. So you have to comment out, test, see what happens. And the other trick usually I want to do is to make sure my application did run this class here. That would be saying system out, app is running, and it is live. So now I'm gonna come to Firefox. There you go. So it is running, it is live. So in 2.2 you had to do a read route for it to render this index page, but in 2.3 it's like magic. You put it in the folder, it runs it. Definitely on port 8080 without any extra thing, but we will still make a route for this because we don't want it to run into problems. I'm done with this part, so and done with that one, and definitely done with POM.xml for now unless some issue raises. So we need 4 folders, and the reason for the 4 folders are we want to manage our packages. So that would be 4 packages in a Spring Tool Suite, but in here we will be creating 4 folders, and that would be cd java. I'm pressing the tab so it would automatically take, and you want to go to where you can see this application.java, and that would be main directory. The first one would be models, then we would have repositories, then we will have services, and then we will have controllers. So it's the same one if you do each one by one, or you can do it in one line. So it will create 4 folders for us in one shot. So the first 2 things we will be dealing with is the model and repository. And if you were using Spring Tool Suite, anything like less than 2.3, you would want to do the first one would be the controller. So I'm going to say visitor controller.java. I'll be using some weird naming, but you gotta change that. So this one, the purpose for this one is we want to create a route for this index.html. So we say that if someone goes to a welcome page or a home page, it needs to go and see this web page. So to do that, we will use the add controller component, and it needs to import it. It did it. If it didn't, then you have an issue. And let's create our first route here. It will be, we say when people come to /visitor, so this is going to be the route when someone requests, and its job is to read this index page, this one, and that would be public string show welcome screen. And there we go, and return index. So you see I didn't put the .jsp because I added that in the property application here, and I didn't put this whole path web app with -inf because I put that here, so it adds it automatically. It adds both at the beginning and the end of this thing when it renders it. And you can always do troubleshooting with, for example, having a system out saying that if it comes here, I was here at controller. You can always add stuff to make sure your app did exactly what you want it to do. So we want to make sure this route is now working. And let's go to browser. Let's see if I don't need to restart it. And that would be visitor, what did we call it? Visitor welcome screen. So this is the name we want to give it, welcome screen. Yes, it did work. And it says I was here. There we go. So that's how you want to make sure when something looks similar. So for this part, up to now is just the basic setting. We just set it up, our skeleton of the project, and it's now running and working. So the part now we're really getting into is to building the database and then the logics in controller. So there are two ways that I can approach this. One is to build all the backend stuff, then go front end, or I will go one step each at a time so we understand how it is dealing with it. Let's start with the model. We will call it the visitor table model. It's just for naming for you guys to know it, and you should, I would recommend you use a better name. So its model is a table. You would usually use visitors. You know that it's a table, or like just visitor model, so you can differentiate. And this is a class, and we got to import entity. So the validation we imported, if you do not import that, usually it was automatically imported the extension pom.xml. If you don't have that, it gives you headache right there in model when you add the validations here. So let's see what we need for this, for the visitors to give us. We want them to give us their first name. We want them to give us their last name and an invitation number. So these are the 4 data types we will be storing in the table, and we definitely want our table to have a private long ID. We are giving it an object wrapper, and if you're not sure, take a look at the difference between long and long. So it's an object wrapper versus a primitive data type. So for the table, we wanted to have automatic ID, and then we wanted to generate its own value, generated value, and that strategy will be generation time.identity. So this one is final. It creates it, changes it, and takes care of it automatically. We don't have to put any input for it. If you don't do this, you can put your own input, and you can say final in the setter, so it takes care of, so people can't change it back once it's created. And this one, what we will use is size method. We will say minimum should be 1, maximum should be 200, and message would equal to must be greater than 1. And that's the maximum minimum. This is constraints for your table. Remember, this is for the table. If something goes to your database and the table is like null, or I mean like less than 1, then it gives a problem. It won't let it. And you can definitely do it not null, like at not null if you don't want it, especially if you have social security stuff like that, you would use this. But for this one, I'm just happy with this constraint. And the last one would be, I would just use 1. I know that my random generator, I mean for the application, would have at least 4 letters. So anything above 4 is fine. And I have no message for this one. So good. We need setter getter. And the other thing is, I did talk about it in the last video. You can always do created on and updated on, which will automatically create 2 tables for if something is created and updated. Let me avoid typing for a lot of them. So those 2 methods, I have explained them full in previous videos. You would create 2 tables. Let me put these 2 together so you know which one is which. Okay, let's import them, and I will show you in the table what they do. Java util persistent. So the column table, you can use it how you want the pattern, the name look like, or in this case we're using it, we want to make sure it's created and never updated again. So for the updated version, we already have a column called update, and I do recommend you to take a look at documentation for these, so you have an idea about pre-persistence for the data. So all we are doing is we say like when this table is called, automatically do these 2 things. If it's first time, create a table and don't let it to be updated, and that's it. If it's updating, then do this. If the table is like the field of update updated each time if someone sends an update. There you go. Just want it to be in the same order. So now we need setters and getters. So I'm going to use this shortcut. I installed this one. I think his name is Shoaib something. His extension I like for the setter and getter, because there are a couple more. One of their problem is they would also create a setter getter for this one, but this guy's application or extension does the job good. And that's it. It's ready to have the database now created. The table, actually, sorry, not the database, the table. We will create the repository for this one, and that would be visitor repository.java. At any point, if you see something like you don't understand it, please feel free to leave a comment and I will try to answer it. And there we go. Oh, it didn't automatically take it. It was supposed to bring this automatically. Let me give it one more shot. With Java, with Java 14, but anything above, like new version of VSCode, VSCode automatically adds the packages, so you don't have to do it manually. Let's say visitor repository.java. There we go. Excuse me. And this is going to be an interface, and this one would be a repository. Repository annotation, yes, there we go. So we do want to extend a Hibernate interface. They have done a good job. So CRUD repository. As always, please just Google this and see what are the data types you're using, especially for the generics. So for this part, and we will say that we want to connect two things: data type visitor model and associated with long. And in here, and if you take a look at generics, you will know why it's what you're doing here if you have no idea about it. And take a look at the CRUD, and at this point it should do the job, but let's add two more things first. I'm going to use a list Java util. I want to say that give me list of all objects. Remember, objects have first name, last name, and invitation number from the database, and I will call this find all. And I also want to get one by ID, so I would say optional give me a list of visitors, get all of them, but find by ID. Just give me one with the ID. Like, I will give you the ID, then give me that object. Okay, let's go to Spring Boot, restart, and now once that goes up, let's go to SQL, see if we have any table. So let's say use to activate it. Let's see wait for the application. Yep, there we go. We have our table now. Refresh. So the constraints we added there would apply here. We can let's see, like we have the created and updated. So these are the two things. We won't be having it in the front end. It will be doing its job at the back end, and it will be automatic primary key. So we are done with this for now, unless we have an issue to drop it and rerun it, see what it has or what it doesn't have. Okay. If you do it not null, then there will be a no null. So it will have, the user has to put data. Okay, the table is created. And let's go and do the service model. So services, usually you call it like a business logic, and this will be visitor service, and you will have multiple of them for each one of your business logics. You can implement all the logics and conditions you have, how you want the data to go back and forth between your database or the model and your controller. And remember, this is your typing Java. You can add condition at any stage, at any level, from the object all the way to the controller. So you can add it's the backend. You can add all the Java codes, whatever conditions you want it. But we want to make it simple. So let's just start with the basic one. We said we want all the objects to show up on the page. So let's build to retrieve all of them. And here's the thing: whenever you want to connect two different objects or classes, you need to import them. So to introduce one to another, like this is what I want you to go and get data from it. And we can use for that the constructor, and that will be private visitor repository. That's what we want to connect. We will say visitor repo. Let's make it a little shorter. And the constructor will be visitor service, definitely for this class, not for the other one. And you would say visitor repository initial visit repo initial value, and we would say this dot visitor repo equals the initial repo. Okay, so let's build now the find all. It will be public, and we want to return a list. So if you use array list, now you need to do some conversion, but we will just use list because we use it there, and it's Java util. And we want a list of all the objects which are in the table, and that would be this one, visitor model, and say show, yeah, let's say show all users. Okay, and we would say all you gotta do is just give me all the list, and that would be return visitor repo dot find all. You can create another variable here and then do all the condition between this method, like implement it as a function. And but for this, we just want all of them to retrieve. Since we have none, we also need to create a read method, create method. So that would be public. And what do you want to do? Want it to return after it creates it, or you just want to submit it? So for this one, I would just submit it. I don't want any returns. And that would be, okay, let's create a visitor. And I say that at this method, create me an object from this one, a table object, remember that. When you learn basic Java, that's the same thing. And we say new visitor. And you would use better names. I'm just doing this for making sure that it's if you look at it, you know that what it is doing. So for this one, I would call it visit repository dot save. Visitor repo dot save. Like, why I'm not getting the name? There you go. So here's the two ways of dealing with this. Sometimes when you make a change, you want to see what you changed from. Like if the name was John, then you change it to Tom, and you want to see that, you would definitely want the same return data type. You would give it a year, and you would say return this. Then you would have something similar in controller, so you see the difference. But for this, I don't want to see. I'm just gonna submit and see what happened in the web page. So those are the two creating ones. And now let's do submit data and see what we submitted. So time to go to controller, and here is the object, and that would be, we will be using for the, okay, for the welcome screen, we will just use two links, and that would be nothing. We will have nothing there. We just want the main page, and we will create two new routes. So the new route will be Git Mapping, say slash visitor, go to this page, public string. You notice we're using the string because we're getting data from front end as a string, like the package travels as a string, and then we convert it back pieces what we need to, like the numbers, integers, whatever we want to do it. So that's why in our page is a text page pretty much. We want to get all the, it's in controller and it's a route. Like if you use Django or Node.js, so you're technically giving this address, like when someone comes to this address from a browser, bring it here. So what you want to do, you say like show all visitors. There you go. And we will use model. This is a class that has a couple features that's implemented, and its job is to bind front end with back end or bind codes with JSP. And we will say model, like just the same naming for it. So we will choose add attribute, and here's the first one. You want to give it a name. I would say list of visitors. Okay, because it's a array list. This one is a list. I will get the whole table in a list, like in an array list, all from like 1, 2, 3. Doesn't matter how many people are there. I just want to get all that list, and I wanted to get this. So from here, okay, I need to do one more thing. As I said, we need to have a constructor. So I would say private visitor service, and that would be visitor serve, a little bit shorter name. So this is basically the same thing as saying like private string name. So just the only difference is we have a new kind of object or data type that we have created, and now we need to have a constructor for controller, and that would be public visitor controller, and this would be these two guys. I would say this one is initial value when it's instantiated. So first time it runs it puts everything from that object inside, and say this dot visitor equals to or connect to initial value. So now we're having access to the service layer, and now we would say that get me visitor service dot show all users. So if it was a REST API, would just say return this, but since we are building the web page, we need to say return a text web page. So we don't have the page yet. Let's create this. You can just right click and create a new JSP file, or if you want to avoid any error, you can go directly inside the terminal and do that, or you can easily say show me in this terminal here, and that would be touch view visitors.jsp, and I'm done for now with that. So let's say render view visitors. Okay, so that's this page. We are saying like go to this address. If someone comes to this address as the request comes, to respond, go to first the layer, get from database all this data, and return it, render it in this page. And that page right now has nothing. So the same strategy, let's copy the tags we need for it. And that's the core tag library. We do need that to show the data, and that would be /html. Undo. We want it to go back. There you go. We would say list of all registered visitor. All visitors. Okay, let's see if it renders that without any problem. Where is it? Spring dash boot run. So we want to go to visitor and we say it. We are going to this address. We want to see all the visitors there. So for now it rendered the web page and it has an object here. So let's create the table to view all the users from the database. And that would be view visitors, even though we don't have anything right now, but once we do, we can at least it will show it. So we are going to design a table. So it will be table, and I need table hit tr. I need a one row, and then I need th, and this would be id. Just want to see their id. Should just name not attack. ID, there we go, th, and this one would be first name. Since this is just the text that will be displayed, it doesn't need to match the database name because this is just for readers. Invitation number. Okay, so now we need the table body. Okay, and so we need to iterate through the table. So we have to do, like, for example, for I, and then for int I equals 0 as less than array dot list. So we have to do a for loop so we can get all the data, because in the controller we're getting back a list, an array list. So in order to show all the data from it, we have to do a for loop, and that for loop for JSP tag is for each, and we say items, you see items, and that would be, this is the Java code that goes inside this, so it would be list of visitors, and I'll tell you that this name has to match this one. So the service repository gets all the data from the database. It goes through the repository service, and then it goes to visitor repository, then it goes to model, and then it brings it back to the service. From service it comes back to the controller. So now all these data gets binded into this variable. This is a variable. It's the same as saying array list, my list equals to all bunch of names. So now that's connected. So once we get a list on our front end, then we have to loop through it so we can display the data. So I just said we had, like, for list, and then for our I, and our I here will be, we need to give it a variable so we can use it down inside visitor. So this one is similar to saying, like, okay, for visitor, integer or a string visitor or list visitor, loop through this list, which is a list of all visitors, and show me each individual object. Like, the object is first name, last name, and the invitation number. So we wanted to do this. So just understand this is a for loop. There's nothing more than that. And this will be your list with the size, and this will be your I variable that you use to loop through it. And we want we want to have a row, so because we want to show each one per row, and you see that it has to iterate through, like, each user will be displayed in one row, so you don't need to have 100 rows. You can definitely do by typing manually, but you would have one row and loop through the data from database and keep showing it how many are there and keep adding that row. It will do it automatically. So now we need to have the TD, and that would be the tag that we need is cout, and the value equals to, what the value is technically, visitor.id. So you see there's a little bit difference in this addition. So it would be like for the list of objects, then inside the object, if the object is a person, then go person.name. What is person.id? What's its ID? Because it's an object, we have to go inside the object to see the data. I'm going to duplicate this. So make sure I don't have any misspelling. So now we are getting this visitor, which is connected there. We want it to show as first name, and this is exactly the same variable names that you have inside your model. So it's the same thing as your table, or the model object that you want the data, and it has to be the same. If it is wrong, you will get an object error. Addition number. So we got 3 of them for now, and we have to come back for the other ones. And let's connect this visitor page, link it over, let me put this here. Let's connect that over here. You would call it href, and that would be /visitor. Now welcome screen. Let's say welcome page. So now let's go check if it works. Refresh. Yes, there we go. We have our table, but we don't have any data in the database. Let's see the link. Yes, the link works. So let's create now a form so we can create users and visitors for objects. So for that, we go back to our visitor service. So we are gonna create a method for submitting data, and that means we need 2 more things. One would be a JSP page and one controller method, and that controller method will have 2 methods. One will be for reading the page, and the other one will be for submitting the page. So always remember, if you have a form or any page that it has a form or extra data, you have to render it first so you can display it, then you render it to submit data through it. So it's mostly get and post method. So let's do the create the JSP first. JSP, there we go. And we would want to call this one register visitor .jsp. There we go. So I need to get the tags for that one, which I'm gonna go to my tag library, copy all this. Okay, and then /body / and HTML. So, and we would say, yep, please register yourself. And now it's time to first render it. First make the address so we can see this, and then we can create the form. So let's go here, let's create this. We would say add Git Mapping. So always we are going to read it first. So we would call this registration view. I can say page so you understand is the viewing the page, but this is a route, okay? And that's the file. Okay, so let's go public string show registration form, and all we need for this one is just a model attribute. Add model attribute, So public string registration view form, and this would be add model attribute. So this is a new JSP tag. I mean, you can use this one, but all we want to do is to bind the page with the page with the server. So we need to have some sort of connection between the web page and the backend so it can render the data. And we will use this model attribute and we will give it a name. What are we connecting? We are connecting, trying to retrieve this. So this object, and we need to have a name that we know that we are connecting to the object itself. I mean, sorry, that's not this one, the object model. So we would say it is visitor object. That's what we're trying to get. So we say get it from the web page front end and connect it to visitor model visitor, and that's it. We just want to connect it. Got nothing else to do with it. So, and the reason for that is being able to read the form. And we would say return. What is the page we want to return? It is register visitor, so we call it register visitor.jsp. Save this, and now let's go to this route. We call it registration view page. Okay, so it works, and let's create the form now. Two more things. We want to just add an anchor tag for this one, so we can just click back and forth. Let's do all of them all in one shot. So where's register user? Let's put it here, and yeah. So to make a form, you have to use this tag here. That's for creating a form. And if you don't have it, it's gonna give you an error. So that's necessary. And let's do it. The other thing is there are two ways of doing there are two ways of viewing the errors when we have an error. One is like showing it right next to the field, or the other one is all showing them in one paragraph. So for this, I will tell you both, but I will choose the first one, which is my form will have a p tag, and then we would say form.errors. I would start with errors and path equals to visitor object and dot all. And now I'm going to create my form. Actually, the form has to be outside form, and action equals to where you want to submit it. So we need to have a path. In here we have this path for reading, but we need one more path for submitting data. So let's do that right here, then go back and complete the form. And that would be at post mapping say register public string register a visitor. It's like one object at a time. Okay, first we want to check it's valid, and then we would set model attribute, and we would use the same thing because that's what we have on our JSP page, and we would say it's a new user, so it would be visitor t model and new visitor, and we will also bind it to finding errors, binding results. Let's take a look at this on Google search. You connect the page, render it, so if there is any error, it reset and shoots back. So you say if it has an error, if result returns an error, in this case, stay on the same page, visitor page, return register visitor. If it doesn't have any error, then call on the service method, call on this one and create one for me. Visitor service, we have instantiated here, so we are calling this instantiate visitor dot create what? New visitor. There we go. And once you create that, then go somewhere else, which is go redirect and show me the list of created visitors. Okay, so now we come back to our register a visitor page, and we need this route. We called it register, so we're gonna come to here and we say, okay, go here, and the method equals to post. It's a post method, and we use the same model attribute. Sometimes I get this wrong. Attribute equals to, and the same name, visitor object. And so what we are telling the computer or the program, that bind this object that comes from view page, from front end, and connected to this type of data. Okay, so that would be first name, last name, invitation number, and then take that, save it. So that's what we are telling. In this part, we are telling if the form has these objects, display it. That's technically, like, briefly, that this is what it means. So now come here, we have the method model attribute. Okay, let's move this one to the right, and now we are gonna create our forms. Okay, let's do the p tag. The first one would be for first name, so it would be form label path equals first name, and you see it will automatically get it from here. This object has a first name, so display next to it first name. And so I use this method of rendering all the errors in one side of the page, because the good thing is later you can have a CSS that will render it. You can make it red and like one side, or wherever you want to show it, or you can do it inside the page itself. If you want to do like next to the field, like the field itself will tell you the error, and then you can choose this one, which is error path, the same thing, first name, and the form, the input type is input path equals first name. So you want to choose one of these two, but for now I'm going with the first one. You can delete this or comment out and then use this one. So let's copy this, and this will be last name, I'm pretty sure there are faster ways of changing the duplicate name. So invitation number, this will be invitation number. Of course, these will be last name, this last name. Copy paste, this will be first name, and this will be invitation number. Actually, I forgot one more thing, and that will be not that important, but it will be the ID. Oh, we don't submit ID for this one, sorry, because it's auto created, so it's a primary key to automatically generate the sequence. Okay, so and the last thing would be a button to submit it. Input type equals to submit, and value will be register. Let's see if it works. There we go. See the form. Hey. So the error part is, I think if I do now, yeah. So the error part is this paragraph here. So that would be like this object versus like showing it next to the field. I mean, you can move it to the right, sorry. But yeah, that's what it is. You want to show all in one place, or you want to show it next to the field? Like which one has the error? So I want to go all in one paragraph. Register, sorry for the misspelling. So let's see if we can submit data. We have chosen the register, the address looks fine. And we have a register method here. That looks fine. Let's try to submit something and see what is wrong with it. So oh my god, one letter took me 5 minutes to find it. Okay, so let's register. And that will be here. And the page address is wrong. No. Let me make sure that I don't have it wrong anywhere else. So let's do this one. Let's connect them so at least we have the hierarchy ready. There we go. It's not a big deal, but it saves us time from going back and forth. Okay, so let's submit something. We say it is Tony Brown and the ID number is this. Did it submit? It didn't give me any error, so and it doesn't show anything. Let's see what we have done wrong in the visitor. Visitor object is right list. controller. So go there, yes. Go to register. If it has an error, tell me and did that. If it doesn't, then create a new one. And go here. We did both of them. So now it is time to look at the view part. Model, show me all of them. And that would be view all visitors, yes. So we do have C for each items. Do I have the core tag? Yes. Okay, C. If it has gone to the database. Yep. It is there. Okay, so it's submitted there. Now the problem is it's not viewing it. There you go. I think I needed to restart and drop the database because I had used it for a while. So there we go. So now we create it, and we're submitting and viewing the data. So sometimes these tiny things creates issue, but sometimes you gotta drop off the table, then recreate it so it can render well, and sometimes you need to restart this manually to implement all the changes. So that was the first how to create something to the database, and we are getting back a result from database. So nothing wrong in these two parts, and now we have to implement the other two parts, which is the getting by ID and editing. Okay, let's create find by ID. So this will be public. The type will be visitor model, and we would say get by ID visitor, and we are gonna pass ID a number, but we want back an object, or we want to find an object by that number and then return it because we need the ID. So in our repository, visitor repository, let's go there. We have an optional method that finds it by ID, so we need to choose that one. It would be optional, and it will be visitor type, and it's a visitor, just one. Find visitor repo that find by ID. There we go. So that will find it, and we can say return a visitor. So what we did, And there's one thing, it gives me an error because it's type optional, so that means I have to do that git, so it returns the ID. Just keep in mind that when you use optional, you would do that git to return the ID from the object. And so what we're doing is now we're getting an object by its ID number. We are passing 1, 2, 3 something, and it's gonna go find it and return it back. You can definitely add options. If it exists, return it. If it does not exist, don't return it. And those are the options that you can add it. Actually, let's do that. Let's do it. So this would be if a visitor dot is present, if it is in the database, return it. If it is not there, then return null. Instead of giving an error, just give me a null ID. With this one, we have two more association, and this would return it with an ID, but we need to use that ID to modify the object. So that would be, let's add one more thing, and that will be for updating the visitor. The update and create method is technically the same. We can use the same one, or we can use one and call it twice, but let's do this one. We would say that update a visitor. We want to update one. So let's do the control part. So right now it takes part of two things. It finds an ID which we needed, and then we will use that ID to update the object. So let's come here and create the two parts. One would be for reading, getting it by ID, and then the second one would be updating it, going to the address that's by ID. And first method would be Git Mapping. So edit view page. First we're gonna go to the view page, and then we say by ID and public string view by ID. And I want you guys to change all these names, so come up with better names. So this will be a path variable. Path variable is like you connect them to one. If you have a parameter, you use this one, but path variable, we want to connect one variable to it here, and that would be type ID, and it is long, its type is long. And so we want to give it an ID, but we want it to return as an object. So let's use model. We say like, once I give you an ID, go find this person, and then once you find it, show me who is this object. So it would be visitor model a visitor equals visitor service dot get by ID. So that's the ID we give it, and once you find it, then connect that to the page. That would be model attribute. Say, let's give it a single object, visitor object, and we say connect that ID with this e-visitor. So we are finding it, then we are binding it using this class object to this one, and we need that to display the data on the form, because we will be updating it. So we would say return, what to return now? Show a single visitor, and that would be an edit page. So let's create a new one. It will be edit visitor.jsp. Let's get all the beautiful commands from the repository on my local machine from my second screen. That would be this part. Yep, and this will be HTML. Yes. Okay. Not there. I need a space here. Okay. Let's give it some information. We'll say edit visitors information. That would be the title. And in here we will have please make corrections. The same form model, we can copy and paste it. The one that submits a user, it's technically the same thing. And let's do that. Okay, I've commented this one out. You want to comment it back because it won't give you any errors if there are any. So let's go to edit. Come here, buddy. I need you to be near me. There you go. So now the only difference, between these two, just remember the difference between a new register and update is to get object.id instead of objects only. And that means, so this part is fine, we are not worried about, it's gonna do its job. But the second part we are gonna change is the route. The first thing, let's do this. It will be backslash. It would require a $sign to translate the Java code. It was a single, what's called a single object. A single visitor object. A single visitor object. I'm sorry. Oh, sorry, wrong place. Edit. And that would be with the ID. So we wanted to go to this route, and this would be edit. Yeah, let's call it edit visitor. Let me put two side by side so I can explain it. So we want, the first thing is only reading, so it's gotta go and read it. But the second one will be for posting, which we haven't done yet. But we want to implement the form before we do that, so it is ready. So it will be the second one. We would give it a name of, that's edit the view page. It would be just edit, and that would be single object.id. Go to this address, like get the object with the ID and make changes. So we want to make sure that this one uses same name, single object, and the remaining parts are the same. It doesn't. Yep. So let's go see if it works. Go to welcome screen. Okay, we want to go to show all visitors. Let's add one more thing here so we can edit And to do that, we are gonna come here and add an option of calling update the user. And in here, we will come and say, give it an anchor tag, and it will be going to the address by ID, and that will be what? That will be /edit view, and this will be visitor.id anchor tag edit. You want to grab it by its ID. It's the same thing here. So we want to grab it by ID, and we want to change that. Okay, let's go to visitor. So we say by ID, get by ID, find by ID, and return visitor edit visitor. It's this page here. Refresh. Let's go. There we go. We got this person. Let's go back. Not that one. Okay, so we want to edit this person. There we go. You have it. That's the ID number. So now we got it by ID, but we want to make changes to it to submit it. So to do that, we need to have a post method, and that will be just edit and //ID, and it will be public string edit a visitor, okay, path variable, we want to grab it by ID. That's all we gotta do. Then we have nothing to do with ID. We want to grab it by ID for now, and then implement everything we did it on the register side. So check, create, and result. This will be the same thing, because it's technically recreating. It's like submitting the whole thing again. You can definitely do the model, which I have done it on API, and each one there you do it individually, like change first name, grab first name, then change first name, and you will be using parameter rather than path variable. So we say when someone submits, if result has error, stay in the same page, which is edit visitor page, return edit visitor. If it doesn't have error, first call the repository service.update, and we can give this a new name. We can say like update current user, and you would copy the same variable and put it here, and then you would say return. Now this is a submission, so you don't want to render it on the same page. You want to go to see all the visitors. Redirect, go to the visitor page. Okay, let's try to update one. It's restarting. View. So I want to first check my errors work or don't. Okay, broke. Single object available as request available. Let's check that one. I think I have misspelling somewhere. But let's see if I change that, what happens. So our method update works, but it breaks when I give it nothing. Okay, so it does update, but it breaks when it has an error, and we will have to check why it does that. Let's go to visitor, edit the visitor. Okay, there we go. The name doesn't match. You could comment out that. You could say that the name is not matching. Ew, from your homes. I'm kidding. It's not live. Okay, let's edit again. Let's submit blank. Okay, edit, single object, visitor controller. So we have to use the same naming, that's why it's not getting the error. Submit. Okay, it's restarting now. There you go, now it'll start working. There. It says it must have something. There you go. Okay, so Johnny, yes Papa, it's the name. Okay, so now it works. I think the problem is the problem was I missed it. So you use this one is for rendering the page, to view the page, but this one is binding the form. So this has to match here. So you say all the errors, to take care of all the errors, and that has to be the same object. That's what you're dealing. That's the method we are dealing with. Okay, let's quickly repeat what I did. So we created a form and we give it the object name, and then we in here the difference between this one and register, you go and grab the ID, and that's it. In the register form, you just set in the object, but in update you grab it by ID, then you update it by ID. That's all you do. Okay, and the last one that's left to do to finish this one is the remove method. So you notice I'm only using post and get method, and I have a reason for that, and that reason is HTML. Okay, rest put delete HTML post. So in HTTP, like you don't have post and you don't in HTML you have get and post, but in REST API you have these put patch, which is not in HTML, but there's a workaround around it. I will just mention it at the end, and that for a beginner sometimes that creates confusion. So at the end of the day, you're doing get and post method anyway if you're just using templating engine, but we can use like a delete method, a mapping method, and I will tell you that in a bit what needs to be changed. So you will have a put method here, but in the form you have to do on the submission, like under this submission. Let me give you an example since I'm here. So for example, it's going to be a put method, and once you do the put method, let's add something, then in the form right down here, you would add another one. You would say that input type equals hidden, and then name equals method, and value equals put. So this will take care of that. Just do this. even like just saying input should work. But anyway, so this will be the workaround around it. As a beginner, sometimes you will face issues, it won't render it, and that's why I didn't add it in this tutorial. So you can just create, and mostly you would use post and get method anyway, and unless you're dealing with REST API. So that is the, let's make sure our application haven't broken yet. Okay, let's create one more. Tina. Okay, so let's do the delete one, and that will be adding a delete method, which is for us here is another post method, say at post mapping, and this will, let's make it big. We would say give me an address, we would call it remove //id. We would say public string remove a visitor, and we only need path variable here. And we will call the service repository, and as I said, the delete repository has its own delete by ID, so you don't have to implement anything. It will be visitor service. Come on. Oh, I haven't implemented delete yet. That's why it's not showing up. Let's go here. Let's go to service. Let's do a delete one here. Public void and delete by ID. We'll type long ID. But for us, we are calling it to delete by ID. The other, you can also add other methods. Like most of your business logics, you would say once, if you would write the same method, but you would say if it exists, then remove it. Let's not get too confused. It's pretty easy. Public delete by ID, you would get past the ID, the repository will find it and will delete it. So we come to controller, we say now delete by ID. Once it deletes it, what it needs to do, we would say return to redirect, and go where? Go to /visitor, we see if we have deleted anybody there. And that means we need to add one more button somewhere to make this happen. So there are two ways to do it, many ways. We can add it here, since it's edit visitor, we can go and delete it here, or we can add it in the main view visitor page. But let's say that someone decides to not attend and leave, and we want to delete it right here. We can do that. And for that, all we gotta do is just create a form here and say delete it. This one would be a normal, non-JSP kind of form. Action equals to, we call it remove, and that would be this guy. You want to remove it by ID, so it's all, we are already in this page with this ID, and all we gotta do is request another post method, and that will take care of it. And this will be an input type submit, and value would be delete. Let's see what have we done. Okay, let's go to update. There's the delete button right under the form. I trust you guys, you will design a better web page than this. So if I say delete, there we go. We can add a question, are you sure? Yes, no, and that would be JavaScript with it. You can mix that, delete, and delete. Welcome screen, let's register everyone from beginning. It will be Kim Anderson, and that will be the number. It will be Johnny, and that will be yes, Papa. And that's it. So let's see what we did. Let me open my PowerPoint. So welcome screen, then we want to ask register to view, and that would be the registration, then show, edit, and delete. Yes, we are done with it. So the other two things, yeah, you can add more stuff. So that's the welcome screen. If you want to register, come here, add your name. If it is wrong, it's not gonna accept it. If it is right, put why am I going after just 4 9s? Register, there we go, we added that. You can edit. And welcome screen, and from here we can view all of them. From view we can edit, delete. Actually, you can, if you want to add delete here, all you gotta do is just get this link and post it there. You can put it in the view page. So that was all. So that's pretty much the post the CRUD application. Let me double check. So we are reading the welcome screen, and then we are reading all the users from database. Then we are creating users, and it has two methods. One shows the HTML page, the other one submits data. If it has error, biting result will tell you what's your message from model, and then from view edit, it gives you back what you get it by ID. Once you find it by ID, then you would grab it and show that. And the second one is edit. You would get it by ID. You would grab it by ID. Then you would implement the save or create method, but it will update it. If it has error, it tells you. If it doesn't have error, it changes it. Then it forwards you back to visitor list to see what you have changed. You can play around, play around with it. Just you can forward it back to edit page to see what's been changed or not, to view one, to this one. All you gotta do is just change this one, redirect it to edit to this route, not here just the page. But if you want to go stay in the same page, forward it to this route, so you're not rendering the same on the same page using post method. And that's remove. So we have update, delete, remove. So I did not use the REST API for the deleting mapping because of the little technical issues. Sometimes for beginners it becomes a challenge. And that's it. So from right all the way to left, we created model first, repository second, and that's when you do restart the database. And when you make changes, you will drop the database or the table. Then we implemented the repository, which has most of things implemented. We only extend this. And do look at the please take a look at their documentation. And we have the service, which is where the business logics goes. It is the basic one, but you will have much more, like if the ID exists, delete it. If not, then tell us why it's not there. And if it matches first name and last name and ID, so all those things, you will add more logics there. And that's it. So I hope it will help you guys, and I'm sorry for the delay. I had a long wait between part 4 and the last part. And that's all from me. Please leave a message if you have, for comments if you have any question, and I will try my best to get back to you guys.